Ma'am, we have a right to enter.
No, get out of my house!
Please, just take the notice.
I said get out!
I left for just 20 minutes, thinking it would be a simple errand. My wife was home alone, and I had no reason to think anything could go wrong. The sun was beating down on the driveway as I pulled out, muttering about grabbing a couple of bags of mulch and some screws for the garden trellis we had been working on all week. I left the side gate slightly open, expecting a delivery later, not imagining the nightmare it would unlock. 20 minutes. That's all it was supposed to be. I pulled back into the driveway and froze. My front door, which I always double-locked even when stepping out for a minute, was slightly ajar. Not enough for someone to walk in openly, but enough to make my stomach twist. A shadow moved behind the living room window. Slow, deliberate enough to make my blood run cold. My first thought was break in. My second, worse, thought was my wife alone inside. I grabbed my phone before even thinking about stepping onto the porch and called 911, trying to keep my voice calm while my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. Within 10 minutes, a police cruiser rolled up. Officer Warren, tall and solid with a buzz cut that seemed to announce authority without a word, approached and instructed me to stay back. He had one hand on his holster as he stepped over the threshold, the other gesturing for me to keep my distance. Then, voices. Unbelievable. The familiar buzz of HOA compliance jargon, a calm but insistent tone, and my own name peppered in complaints I hadn't imagined. Officer Warren waved me over after a few tense moments. "You're going to want to see this," he said. I walked into my own living room and felt the air shift. Two people in bright green vests, clipboards and tablets in hand, stood rifling through the space I had built with my own hands. My wife's face appeared behind the sofa, startled, clutching the armrest like a lifeline. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice sharp. "Green Pine HOA," the woman said without flinching. "Conducting a compliance inspection in response to a resident complaint." I blinked. "This is my house. I'm not a member." "You're trespassing." The man's voice was calm, almost robotic. "Article 7, subsection C," he said. "Their right to enter community properties to verify complaints of hazardous conditions and aesthetic violations." I tried to process the absurdity. This wasn't community property. This was my home. I wasn't in their HOA. My wife was alone. My chest tightened. Officer Warren stepped in. "You have any right to be here?" he asked the clipboard duo. "No," I said. "Absolutely not. You're trespassing. Step outside." Reluctantly, they complied, one turning with a smirk, the other silent. "You'll hear from the board," she said. "And they'll hear from my lawyer," I shot back, voice low but cold. I watched them walk off, the faint scent of their overzealous authority still lingering in the air. I locked the door, then the gate, then went straight to the office to gather every single document proving my property was outside their jurisdiction. Title, surveys, plat maps, emails, everything. The next morning, a bright orange envelope was taped to the front door. Bold letters at the top, notice of violation. Immediate compliance required. I opened it with shaking hands, rage bubbling beneath a thin veneer of composure. Alleged infractions, fines starting at $100 per day, and threats of legal action filled the page. Overgrown lawn, unapproved greenhouse, improper waste storage. I wanted to laugh, but the anger made my jaw clench instead. I went through my files again. Everything confirmed it. I had specifically bought this house to avoid HOA restrictions. Lot 18 of Miller Hollow was mine. They didn't care. Green Pine HOA didn't care. 2 hours later, a knock at the door. Jerry, my neighbor from across the street, leaned in, nervous, eyes darting around as if the walls themselves were listening. He whispered about Karen Landis, the HOA president, aggressive, controlling, and apparently obsessed with bringing residents under her sway, regardless of legality. Letters, hand-delivered notices, escalating threats. Flyers, warnings, attempts to shame me publicly. I took a deep breath and called Camila Rose, a lawyer specializing in property disputes and HOA abuse. She responded within the hour, and by the next day, we were already planning a defense. She didn't look like a lawyer I'd expect, nose ring, black glasses, coffee cup boldly stating, "Sue me." Her intensity, though, was exactly what I needed. We filed a cease and desist immediately. A formal letter to the HOA board and Karen Landis personally, citing trespass, harassment, and potential civil damages. They didn't back off. That weekend, landscaping crews showed up, ripping out my rose beds, measuring my porch without permission. I stormed outside, barefoot, screaming at them to leave. They finally did, leaving a broken solar light as a warning. I documented everything, every scrap, every camera angle. The next week, things escalated again. Surveillance in my backyard, bolt cutters, HOA employees rifling through firewood, testing boundaries. I called the sheriff, captured everything on high-definition cameras, and continued documenting. Each escalation seemed designed to provoke me into reacting, giving them justification, but Camila had prepared for that. Restraining orders were filed. Criminal trespass motions, civil complaints, everything documented to the smallest detail. Meanwhile, propaganda started. Flyers, online posts, local newsletters painting me as the dangerous, uncooperative neighbor. My wife sat beside me at night, terrified yet resolute, helping sort evidence, identifying HOA members in video footage, supporting the case in ways that were just as critical as any lawyer or camera. I realized then, it wasn't about mulch, screws, or even a greenhouse. It was about control. My home, my family, my life. My wife had been alone when they first crossed the line, and that violation had ignited something in me that no letter or threat could extinguish. By the end of the first week, we were ready. Every envelope, every trespass, every flyer meticulously catalogued. Cameras pointed, lawyer briefed, sheriff notified. The HOA had assumed compliance by fear and submission, but they had underestimated me, and the fact that my wife had been there alone, facing the intimidation firsthand, made this personal. And I promised myself, and her, this was just the beginning. I stood on the porch that night, flashlight in hand, scanning the side gate, the fences, the backyard. Every shadow seemed suspicious, every rustle a potential violation. I wasn't paranoid. I was careful. They had entered our home once. I would not let it happen again. And yet, deep down, I knew the fight was far from over. I woke up that morning to an eerie stillness, the kind that feels heavier than silence. My coffee hadn't even cooled from the night before, but I had to check the mailbox. As I approached the door, my stomach twisted. Bright orange envelopes had multiplied overnight, shoved under the mat and stacked beside it as if they were breeding. Each envelope carried the same message: fines, violations, immediate compliance. Section 3, Subsection 1, Overgrown lawn. Section 4, Unapproved greenhouse. Section 5, Trash bins improperly stored. Every sheet ended with the same threat: pay, correct, or face legal action. My wife, still pale from yesterday's ordeal, watched me sift through the growing pile. "They can't do this," she whispered, voice tight with fear and anger. "We're not even members." I nodded, squeezing her hand, knowing her fear was real, because I felt it too. But fear alone wouldn't solve this. Rage and preparation would. I spread out every document I had: title deeds, property surveys, email confirmations from the realtor, even plat maps confirming our lot had never been part of Green Pine HOA. Everything screamed legitimacy on our side, but these letters, with their bold, authoritative fonts and threatening language, were designed to wear us down. My wife paced the living room, her brow furrowed, silently strategizing along with me. She had seen firsthand what these people were capable of, and her intuition had been right. Camila Rose was the first lifeline. Within hours, we were on a video call, walking her through every envelope, every threat, every inch of our documented evidence. "They're building a paper wall," she said, trying to make it look like resistance is futile. Her eyes were sharp through the screen, scanning the documents as if she could see through the pixelated pages. "This is psychological warfare, not just legal. They hope you break before they do." I glanced at my wife, who had taken a seat with the envelope spread before her like battlefield intelligence. Together, we mapped out a response. Camila suggested meticulous documentation, photos of every envelope, scans of every letter, logs of each incident, timestamps of HOA communications. My wife volunteered to log the dates and times while I gathered photographic evidence. She even started cataloging which HOA member had delivered which letter or notice. Her involvement turned the fear into action, and action felt like control. But Green Pine HOA was relentless. That afternoon, a landscaping crew showed up, unannounced. Not just trimming bushes, not just mowing the grass, they were tearing out beds, measuring the porch with a tape, and replacing solar lights I had installed myself. I stormed out, barefoot and furious, confronting the crew as they waved their work order. "Green Pine HOA," one muttered. "We were sent to ensure compliance." I raised my voice. "You are trespassing. Leave now." They hesitated but ultimately complied, leaving a trail of broken plants and debris behind. My wife stepped outside, hands on her hips, glaring as if willing them to understand the violation they had committed. Her presence, her calm but firm stance, gave me a jolt of energy. This wasn't just about me anymore, this was about us defending our home. Later that evening, the mailbox delivered yet another surprise. Flyers, full color and grainy black and white images, plastered with headlines like, "Lot 18, Dangerous Neighbor Threatens Our Community." One photo even showed me yelling at the landscaping crew. My wife's hands trembled as she picked up the flyer, her face pale. "They're trying to make us look like the villains," she said quietly. I held her, gripping her shoulders. "Let them try. We have the truth." The online community didn't help. A Green Pine residents' Facebook group had exploded overnight. Threads dissected every action attributed to us, with hundreds of comments arguing about our alleged refusal to cooperate. Some neighbors were sympathetic, most were outraged, fueled by HOA propaganda. Karen Landis herself had commented, her words precise and cutting, "Our HOA exists to protect and uplift. When one resident refuses to cooperate, the community must all bear the burden. Safety is not optional." I could feel my wife stiffen beside me. Her eyes flicked between the screen and me. "This isn't just harassment," she said. "They're attacking our reputation. Our lives." Camila saw it too. In our next call, she was clear. "This is escalating from intimidation to character assassination. Document everything. Photos, videos, emails, even online posts. This will form a case not just for trespassing, but for defamation." She explained how these tactics were designed to pressure us into submission, to manufacture consent for future escalations. The next night, I heard it before I saw it, the drone buzzing over the backyard, circling like a predator. Motion alerts flashed on my phone. 2 figures in HOA-branded polos prowled the yard, one with bolt cutters in hand. My wife had stepped outside briefly to water plants and froze when she noticed them. "Call the police," she whispered, barely audible over the drone's whine. I grabbed my phone, dialing the sheriff directly. Cameras were already recording. Every inch of their intrusion, every piece of evidence, was being captured. Minutes felt like hours, but Deputy Morales arrived 20 minutes later, professional and decisive. She examined the footage, the bolt cutters, the broken fence latch. HOA claimed they had permission from the board. "Board of what?" I asked. "This isn't a country club, it's my home." She didn't argue, simply collected the evidence, confirming the criminal trespass. By the end of the week, the strategy was clear: document, defend, escalate legally if needed. Every flyer, every letter, every trespass was catalogued. My wife remained my anchor, handling evidence, checking cameras, supporting me emotionally through each new intimidation tactic. I realized then how critical her presence and participation had been. Alone in the house the first day, she had felt helpless. Now, together, we were a coordinated force. But Green Pine HOA wasn't finished. More envelopes, more threats, more propaganda. Every action felt calculated, relentless. Camila reminded me that persistence and pressure were their weapons. Our response had to be just as methodical, just as unwavering. That night, as we sat together reviewing the latest letters and videos, my wife turned to me. "They think they can scare us," she said, voice firm despite the tension in her jaw. "But we're ready. We know our rights. They're not going to break us." I nodded, gripping her hand tightly. Tomorrow, we would take the next step: filings, legal motions, preparation for the inevitable court battle. Green Pine HOA had escalated, but they hadn't seen the full extent of our response yet. And I knew, deep down, that this war was just beginning. I had barely slept that night, my mind racing with the previous week's chaos. Every shadow outside seemed suspicious. Then, a familiar buzzing, the drone. My wife had stepped outside to water the plants, and her breath caught when she saw the figures moving in the backyard. Two men, HOA-branded polos, one holding bolt cutters, casually rifling through my firewood and inspecting the shed. My heart pounded, adrenaline surging. I grabbed my phone, dialing the sheriff immediately, all while slipping on shoes and rushing outside. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I yelled. One of them turned, startled, the other raised a laminated paper like a badge. "Routine inspection," he said calmly. "Multiple complaints about chemical storage, fire hazards. We have a right to inspect." I laughed, fury building. "You are trespassing. There's a restraining order in place." My voice rang across the yard, sharp and unwavering. The man with the bolt cutters hesitated, annoyance flashing in his eyes, but did not leave immediately. My wife stood behind me, trembling but resolute, documenting the entire confrontation with her phone. Within minutes, Deputy Morales arrived. She took statements, photos, video, and confirmed the HOA had violated the restraining order. Camila Rose acted fast. Motion for temporary restraining order against Green Pine HOA representatives was filed within 24 hours, approved in under 72. Finally, some relief, but the pattern was clear: every move we made was anticipated, every defensive step met with escalation. Flyers, newsletters, online smear campaigns, Green Pine HOA was targeting our reputation now. The local community newsletter published an article, unnamed but unmistakable. "Dangerous, uncooperative neighbor refusing to follow rules." Photos highlighted, text accusatory. My wife helped catalog each piece, her insight critical, spotting inconsistencies and evidence manipulation that Camila later used in filings. I realized then that this wasn't just a property dispute. It was psychological warfare. Every envelope, every flyer, every drone pass was designed to break us down. But my wife's presence, her engagement, had shifted the dynamic. Fear was now replaced by preparation, terror replaced by strategy. Together, we documented every violation, every trespass, every attack on our character. Court day arrived. The courthouse smelled of floor wax and stale coffee, the kind of place where truth feels suffocated by bureaucracy. Camila and I sat across from Karen Landis and her attorneys, two well-dressed, smug professionals who seemed convinced of their invincibility. Karen didn't even glance at me, just whispered to her lawyers, her smile tight, calculating. Camila stood, opening the case with precision. Evidence lined the table: photographs, letters, videos, timestamps, and documentation proving that Green Pine HOA had trespassed repeatedly, ignored restraining orders, and engaged in character defamation. My wife's testimony was critical, alone in the house during the first intrusion, seeing the HOA staff and fearing for her safety, yet documenting everything accurately. Her calm but detailed account added immense weight. The judge, an older man with a reputation for hating HOA drama, looked at the evidence in silence for several minutes. "This is not a zoning or beautification dispute," he said finally. "This is a property rights case with criminal components. Treat it accordingly." He nodded to Camila, who methodically presented each instance. The front door intrusion, the orange envelopes, the landscaping crew trespassing, the drone surveillance, and finally, the online smear campaign. Karen's attorneys tried to argue that the HOA had authority under community safety rules, but Camila demolished their claims one by one. Every boundary, every deed, every legal precedent showed clearly that we were never part of their HOA. Every attempted intimidation and trespass was illegal. My wife's testimony reinforced this. Her calm recounting, her fear, her presence alone in the house, it added a human element to the legal argument, making the HOA's claims feel absurd. After hours of hearing, the judge paused. Given the evidence, the restraining order violations, and repeated trespass, this court finds substantial merit in the plaintiff's claims. Temporary orders will be converted into long-term injunctions until further proceedings. Further violations will be treated as criminal acts. Relief washed over me. My wife squeezed my hand, a silent victory passing between us. But Green Pine HOA wasn't finished. They appealed, tried to escalate via newsletters and community meetings, but each action was met with careful legal counters. Flyers were documented, online posts captured, every attempt at intimidation recorded. My wife became my co-strategist, helping to monitor every move, every comment, every potential violation. Together, we turned their psychological warfare against them. Weeks later, after several hearings, Karen Landis and her HOA representatives were formally restricted from entering our property. Any violation would trigger immediate criminal charges. They could no longer harass, intimidate, or attempt to control our home. The combination of evidence, documentation, camera footage, and my wife's testimony had won the day. Standing in the backyard, watching the sunset with my wife, I finally felt a sense of peace. The fight had been long, harrowing, and exhausting. But it had reinforced something crucial: our home, our safety, our dignity. No one could take that from us. The battle wasn't just about property, it was about asserting our rights, protecting those we love, and refusing to be intimidated. And even though Green Pine HOA would likely continue to grumble, file petty appeals, or whisper in the neighborhood, they would never again cross the line. My wife, once alone and fearful, had become a pillar of strength, a witness, and a strategist. Together, we had reclaimed our home, our peace, and our lives. The nightmare that began in 20 short minutes had turned into a victory forged through documentation, courage, and unbreakable resolve.